April 7th, 1945. Bf-109 pilot Heinrich Hinkel cruises at 32,000 feet. He is a volunteer with Germany's ramming unit, the Sonderkommando Elbe. Heinrich Hinkel is one of the few to survive this extraordinary mission.
Permission was given for a free fight. Normally, we always attacked in groups, but now everybody could pick the closest target where he thought he could be successful, and that's how it was done.
10,000 feet below him, he spots the bomber stream. They are B-24s of the 467th Bomb Group. Henkel pushes over into a dive. The vibrating cockpit and whine of the engine may be the last things he ever feels or hears. He picks a target, a B-24 Liberator called Sack Time. They're nearing the target, a munitions factory at Crummel. Nose gunner Joe Flynn readies the bomb release.
It was quiet. It looked like it was going to be a milk run, and then we turned when we hit the IP initial point to do the bomb run. That's when all hell broke out.
Henkel is here. Sack Time is here. Henkel will streak in from above, relying on the element of surprise. Then, with total disregard for his own safety, he'll do the unthinkable. Ram the tail section of the B-24, using his wings and propeller like a cleaver.
Beseitigt, dann ist es flugunfähig.
If you take off the tail section, the airplane can't fly anymore. That was the most effective method of destroying the enemy.
An den Gegner heranzukommen.
Henkel streaks in, making constant adjustments to his attack angle and velocity. Aboard Sack Time, tail gunner Robert Perkins calls out a bandit at 5 o'clock.
My father said, though, he heard a change in his voice, and suddenly he began to shout into the interphone, "He won't turn away, he won't turn away."
Heinrich Henkel closes in at over 400 miles per hour, ignoring the 50 caliber rounds hammering his aircraft. He's fixated on knocking the Liberator that looms before him out of the sky with one savage blow. The radical tactic of ramming had precedent in recent Luftwaffe operations. In 1944, a unit called the Sturmgruppen had embraced ramming, though only as a last resort.
If they weren't able to shoot the bombers down by cannon fire, machine gun fire, they would ram the tail of the bomber and bail out. Their idea wasn't a kamikaze type suicide ramming. It was a ramming so the pilot could get out.
The Sturmgruppen employed specially armed and armored Focke-Wulf 190. But the hundreds of pounds of extra weight rendered them extremely vulnerable to more nimble U.S. fighters. This figured importantly in Hajo Hermann's approach with the Sonderkommando Elbe. Hermann opted for a completely different and much more dangerous tactic. He selected very lightly armored Messerschmitt Bf-109s. The stripped-down 109s could climb much higher than American fighters and then dive on the bomber formations unimpeded.
Und Panzerplatten ausgebaut.
Weapons and armor plating were removed from the normal planes. All we had left was one MG-131 with about 50 shots, so that the airplanes were as light as possible.
So leicht wie möglich waren.
The Sonderkommando Elbe developed three unique methods of ramming. Elba pilots were instructed to use the steel propeller of the Bf-109 to destroy the control surfaces on the tail. They could also ram the wing near one of the bomber's engine. The last, most ghastly method was to swing in from the side and ram the cockpit. The bomber pilots inside would be killed instantly.
Wenn man mit 200 Kilometer Überschuss auf ein Flugzeug stürzt.
When you're closing on an aircraft 150 miles per hour faster than its speed, the question is whether you're going to hit it where you want to hit it. You only have split seconds.
Da hat man nur noch Bruchteile von Sekundenzeit.
It was never intended that the pilot fly home. The Bf-109 would not survive the impact. The most an Elba volunteer could hope for was to somehow survive the crash and bail out. Despite the extreme danger of the tactic, Elba pilots did not view themselves as suicide pilots or kamikazes.
Die japanischen Piloten
The Japanese pilots had explosives in their airplanes,
ihrem Flugzeug
and with that had to sacrifice themselves. But we Elba pilots use our airplane as a weapon. The Bf-109 and its metal propeller that served as a saw. We hoped we would have the opportunity to get out with a parachute.
wenn es möglich war, auszusteigen.
Now, Heinrich Henkel steels himself for the violent encounter, hoping it will not be the ultimate sacrifice.
Ich habe bestimmt etliche Treffer in der Maschine, aber
My fighter was hit repeatedly, but I wasn't hurt at all. So I could still ram the enemy's tail section with my wings.
Gegners dann mit meinen Tragflächen beseitigen oder rammen. Ja.
Just before impact, Henkel catches a glimpse of tail gunner Robert Perkins.
Gut, saß dann.
He was sitting there and lifted his hands in terror when he realized that I was coming closer. I probably would have done the same thing.
Aber ich wollte das nicht ausdrücklich hier.
Henkel makes a final adjustment, aiming his right wing at the vertical stabilizer. Pilot Bob Winger watches in amazement as the 109 cartwheels outside his window.
Was he close to us? Extremely close. The distance between our wings was several feet tall, and he disappeared from my view. Of course, I was a bit excited.
It just looked like it had a nose, period. No propeller at all because they were wrapped in.
Navigator Walter Parker is nearly thrown to the floor by the impact.
He saw the German fighter plane cartwheel over the front of the plane, and he said he was able to see the swastika on the tail of the plane as it cartwheeled over, and he knew right away that they had been rammed.
Henkel is violently slammed by the collision.
Henkel is still alive. He's in his airplane, but he's incapacitated. The airplane is just tumbling positive, negative G's.
He struggles to release his seat harness and manages to throw open the canopy as the 109's wings are ripped off. The force ejects Henkel from the cockpit moments before the plane explodes.
Allerdings bestand dann die Gefahr, dass der Gegner
There was still the danger that the enemy fighters that protected the bombers would shoot you in your parachute. That happened in a few
die
cases.
einzelnen Leute noch am Fallschirm abgeschossen haben. Haben sie auch zum Teil gemacht.
Henkel plays dead, tumbling from 20,000 to under 4,000 feet. He pulls the ripcord on his parachute. Incredibly, he survived his ramming attack on the American.
Ja, beim Aufsprung hatte ich hier.
When I hit the ground, I suffered a few wounds. I was pulled through some bushes by the parachute. When you do these things for the first time, you don't know what you're doing. But I wasn't really hurt, just a few scratches.
Keine Verletzung. Bis auf paar Hautabschnitte.
But Sacktime's ordeal has just begun. As the Liberator shudders on impact, the left wing drops violently. Winger fights the controls. Nothing has prepared him to fly an aircraft that's been hit by a 6,000-pound battering ram. He has only seconds to recover, or Sacktime will be ripped apart. April 7th, 1945. The German ramming assault on U.S. bombers has claimed another victim, the B-24 Sacktime. Now the once graceful bomber is plummeting out of control. In the nose, Joe Flynn is desperately on the intercom, asking what to do with the bombs.
I called twice that you want me to drop the bombs, and I didn't get an answer. Bombs away. That's it. I didn't get the answer. Twice I dropped the bombs. Flick the switch, and that's it. You're gone, baby.
The B-24 lurches as it sheds the weight of 5,000 pounds of high-explosive ordnance. Pilot Bob Winger strains at the controls as the Liberator teeters on the brink of destruction.
In the fraction of a second that he had to make a decision to prevent that airplane from flipping over and going completely out of control, he instinctively made the right moves and was able to stabilize the aircraft almost immediately.
The brutal ramming attack has inflicted grievous damage. The bomber's right vertical stabilizer is sheared off. The German's propeller has torn a gaping hole in the right rear fuselage, and the bomb bay doors are jammed open. Winger is able to keep the airplane aloft, but the loss of critical control surfaces on the tail forced the left wing down. It takes superhuman effort to keep the Liberator from flipping over. Winger and co-pilot Jeff Nard must both apply full right rudder and aileron to stabilize the wings, while holding the control yoke in their stomachs to keep the nose up.
We were doing everything we could to just maintain this 30-degree angle there.
Two P-51s, long-range fighter escorts nicknamed Little Friends by the bomber crews, join up with the struggling Sacktime. The P-51s escort Sacktime towards the safety of Belgium. It's an excruciating journey for Winger and his co-pilot. If they let up for a second, Sacktime will roll over and break apart. With nothing but brute strength, the men hold the 20-ton behemoth in the sky for an agonizing 45 minutes. Confident that the B-24 is safe from enemy fighters, the P-51s break off. The fighter on the left peels away, but the Mustang on the right pulls in front and rocks his wings in salute. But as he throttles away, the bomber is suddenly hammered by a mini tornado of prop wash. The Little Friend's gesture is not well received on board Sacktime.
It's everything Winger and the co-pilot can do to keep the bomber airborne and to keep it flying. To have gone this far in this whole mission, in this whole catastrophe, and to be knocked out of the sky by prop wash from one of your own escort airplanes, it was almost ridiculous to try to even fathom the whole thing.
Winger and Nard make one last heroic rally, their aching muscles fed by pure adrenaline. Again, they manage to pull the Liberator out of a terminal dive. After walking a tightrope for what seems like an eternity, Sacktime finally arrives over an emergency airstrip in Belgium. Bob Winger knows the aircraft cannot land. He orders his men to bail out. Walter Parker and Joe Flynn jump out the nose wheel door.
Parker jumped first. I gave him the choice. He was bigger than me. So if he could fit out under the wheel, then I knew I could fit out under the wheel. I wasn't being brave.
April 7th, 1945. Bf-109 pilot Heinrich Hinckel cruises at 32,000 feet. He is a volunteer with Germany's ramming unit, the Sonderkommando Elbe. Heinrich Hinckel is one of the few to survive this extraordinary mission.
Permission was given for a free fight. Normally, we always attacked in groups, but now everybody could pick the closest target where he thought he could be successful, and that's how it was done.
10,000 feet below him, he spots the bomber stream. They are B-24s of the 467th Bomb Group. Hinckel pushes over into a dive. The vibrating cockpit and whine of the engine may be the last things he ever tail section. Walter Parker watches in amazement as the tailless bomber plummets.
It began to spiral down within the same area that the crew had just bailed out into. And my father said that it passed probably within 50 to 100 yards of him and Joe Flynn, the nose gunner.
Propellers still churning. What's left of sack time hits the ground and explodes.